Hello and welcome. Today we will be modeling another case study of the traffic lights. So let me first brief you about the case study. The case study we will be modeling right now represents a simple traffic lights controller for the north-south and east-west intersection. The north-south is a main road and is given green light unless a sensor is rarely used. Unless a sensor on east-west road is activated. When the sensor on east-west road is activated, the north-south light was green for enough time, then light will change to give enough time. Then the light will change to give a way to east-west traffic. The design also takes into account emergency vehicles that can activate an emergency sensor. When the emergency sensor is activated, the north-south and east-west lights will turn red and remain red for the minimum period of 3 cycles. So first of all, we will be modeling the structure for the case study. For that, we have created the project as we have done before. Don't confuse with these tabs. These are other projects already modeled. So our model is this. First of all, we will be adding the block definition diagram for the structural modeling. Right click on the SysML model in the Model Explorer window, new diagram. Then add a new block definition diagram. Rename it as just, let's say, structure. And okay. The diagram has been created. Now we need a block. Let's name it as traffic lights controller. Now we do not need properties, operations and constraints for this case study. We only need flow ports. We are using flow ports because the flow ports have direction as input port, output port or in-out port. So let's first remove these compartments. Go to the filter, right click, go to the filters, show hide compartments, open up, uncheck properties, operations and constraints. We only need flow ports. Check flow ports and okay. We are left with the flow ports compartment only. Now add some flow ports onto the compartment. Here is the flow port inside the port and flows compartment of the palette. Just drag and drop the flow port from the palette onto the flow ports compartment of the block. We can rename it as, first of all, clock, CLK clock. Its direction would be input port. So to change its direction, go to the select the port first of all, and then go to the SysML tab of the properties. You can scroll down. Then here is the direction: input port, output port or in-out. We need it as an input port, so is input port. We are not typing it now. The type of the clock would be added later. Now another flow port, the same way. Rename it as reset. It also will be as input. So the direction will be the input. Flow port, another flow port called as EW sensor. EW stands for east-west sensor. Okay. Its direction would be in-out because we are assuming that the in-out port acts as a wire. Okay. Another flow port called as emergency sensor. It's sensor. Okay. The type of all the ports would be added later on. Now another flow port called as NS green timer. NS green timer. Now another flow port called as east west to red command. Now another flow port called as, it's also EW to red CMD command will also be an in out port. Now another flow port we need called EW east west green grant. It also will be an in out port. Then another flow port we need called as emergency sensor acknowledge. Emergency sensor acknowledgement. It's an emergency sensor acknowledge will also be an in out port. Then another flow port we need called as NS state, and it is an output port. Another flow port we need called as east-west state, and it will also be an output port. Now we have added some ports according to our need. Now we have to type these ports. The clock and the timer will be typed by the signal because they will receive a signal from the clock and timer activities, and the activities of the timer and the clock will be discussed later on in the next videos. So let's first take another block called as, no, sorry, not a block but signal. Here it is, the signal stereotype. We will discuss it later on. It's just used to type, it's used just because we want to type the clock with a signal and the timer with a signal. Okay, so the clock should be typed by the signal. Go to the UML tab for typing it. Okay, here it is. Click on this button. Here is signal. Okay, so the clock is typed by the signal. Reset would be typed as boolean because it will return either reset is there or not. Okay, we are not here any. First, add UML primitive types. To add UML primitive types into the model, right click, import, go to the registered package, UML primitive types. Okay, import all. Okay, now you can see that these types have been imported into the model. So reset would be the boolean. Because it will return whether there is a reset or not. EW sensor will also be the boolean type. It will also result whether EW sensor is on or not. Emergency sensor will also be a boolean type. And a screen timer would also be the signal type because it will send or receive the signal. It it will return whether there is a signal or not. That's why we have typed it as a signal. EW to write command will also be the Boolean type. EW green grant will also be the Boolean type. Sensor acknowledge will also be the Boolean type. We have to take one more port, east west sensor acknowledge. So go to the port and flows, flow port, add flow port EW sensor acknowledge. It will be the in out. Okay. Now NS state will be the its type will be added later, because we have to first define the lights, whether it is green, red, yellow, then it is typed by that lights. EW sensor acknowledge will also be the Boolean type. Okay, now we need to define the set of lights, that is yellow, red, green. For that we have to use the enumeration. Enumeration is here in the data type section of the palette. Drag and drop it here. You can rename it as traffic lights. Traffic lights. Just resize it a bit. Okay. Now add some literals to it. Here is the enumeration literal. Drag and drop it into here. Let's say first red. Then another which is green. Another which is yellow. Another which is pre-green. Another which is off. Now the NS state will be typed as traffic lights. Okay, and EW state will also be typed as state traffic lights. Okay, this is the enumeration containing a set of lights which will be the states in our system. Either it is in red state, either it is in green or yellow, or pre-green or off state. Now we need another block for the timer to model the timer activity. So let's add another block. Here it is, block. Rename it as timer. We only need properties because we have to add two variables into the timer block, so we do not need operations or constraints. So go to the right click, go to the filters, show hide compartments, uncheck operations and constraint, and we are left with only with the properties. We need two properties. Here it is, here property. Drag and drop onto the properties tab. First property will be the initial value of the timer, and it will be an integer value. Type will be integer. Then another property called as timer max count, and it will also be an integer. Okay, so this is the structural model for the traffic lights case study. So in the next video we will be modeling the behavior of the case study. So this is it for the structure. Thank you.